I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to another episode of Justice for All Beyond the Cut. I'm your host and executive producer, Nathaniel Paul. Over the last few months, I've had the honor of leading discussions on a number of different topics with a number of different guests on issues facing our nation. Those guests were from different backgrounds, different professions, and a lot of times didn't see eye to eye. One thing they did have in common, though, they were all adults. That is, until now, because today we're looking to the future with a conversation with the next generation. And helping me lead that conversation is two of the coolest middle school students I've ever met. Ms. Gabrielle Young, Mr. Jordan Pelletier. Welcome to Beyond the Cut, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we talked a little bit off camera. Both of you guys are 13 years old, correct?
Yeah.
All right. I remember when I was 13. Wasn't that long ago. Doing a lot of crazy things at that age, but one thing I was not doing was sitting inside a barbershop talking about race. That's exactly what you two are doing. You could be on the football field right now. You can be talking to friends. You both could be asking your mom for allowance money. But you're here, wanting to talk about your future, wanting to talk about things when it comes to social justice movement. So that leads me to my first question. Gabrielle, why did you want your voice to be heard today?
I don't even know if it's so much as much my voice, but everybody I know, their voices, because my experience isn't enough. Like even here, we're not even gonna get to everybody else's because everybody has a different view. Everybody has their own experiences, and I just want to be here to spread light on a few of them, the ones that I know. And so my experiences that I might have had felt like maybe how I felt like I was treated differently. Somebody else, my friends, my family, they felt the same thing, but they had a totally different experience. It was in a totally different environment, so I just want to be able to speak for them as well.
Okay. Jordan, what about you?
I feel it's important that we're on here because we have the voice to speak for everybody that feels the same way of what we're talking right now. So we have a voice for everybody and to tell them to speak up and talk about their problems about race.
Good answers, good answers. So there might be people sitting at home right now and they said, what is this? Like we're talking about social justice, we got two 13-year-olds on, they're too young. They don't know enough about this stuff. What do you say to those folks right now watching that may be a little skeptical as we start this conversation?
Am I too young to experience it? I mean, discrimination knows no age. Anybody can experience it anywhere and any way. It's spread, it's in people from even the friends and family I have up in New Jersey. They have experiences of racism. People in Florida will have experiences of racism. It's across the country. It's everywhere. And so it's not something that's gonna just go away. It's everywhere. We're gonna experience it and we need to know.
Jordan, what about you? Some people might say, hey, you seem like a smart kid, but you're a little too young to be talking about this stuff.
Well, they wouldn't know if we have experienced it or not, but that's why we're on here, to share our experiences.
So let's talk about probably one of the biggest things that happened last year that got a lot of people's attention and kind of re-sparked the social justice movement, George Floyd. Did you see the video of what happened?
Yeah, I did.
And how did that make you feel?
That it was so sad that he couldn't go home. He was calling for his mom. His mom wasn't there. He wouldn't get to see his family again. His family won't get to see him again. He died at the hands of a police officer. Police officers are supposed to protect us, but he wasn't protected. He was killed. That's not right.
Jordan, what about you? Did you see the video and how did it make you feel?
Yes, I saw it, and it's not every day that you see a grown man on the ground crying for his mom, screaming he can't breathe. And cops, police officers, they think they're above the law, but there is a law where it says no one's above the law, and they need to treat everybody equally, like we're all the same race and all the same color.
So, a lot of emotion from both of you when talking about that. You see something like that, and then you still have to go about your life, right? You still got to go to school, still got to go to after-school activities, talk to friends. Was that hard to do? Was that hard to go back to your friends and just continue to be a young kid, especially with friends that may not be black?
Because they don't understand. So they might not even know, and I'm not even worried about myself as much as I'm worried about people who look like they're darker than me, and they're facing something that's worse than what I'm facing. People always wonder what my race is, and so for me, I can fit into so many different boxes. But for some people who stand out, it's harder for them, and so I wouldn't say the same thing to one of my white friends as I would to a black friend, because to them, I don't think a white friend would understand what I'm going through, and I think they just have a little bit of a rose-tinted glasses, maybe optimism even, because they don't really know. And so for them, they can see the situation completely differently. Maybe you were just being rude, or maybe he just doesn't like you, okay? Maybe it's not because you're black. And so, but you're not gonna get the same answer that you would from a black person, because they'll probably pinpoint it a lot faster.
Jordan, what about you? You play football. After seeing that video, was it difficult going back on the football field? Was it difficult going back in the classroom and talking with friends?
It wasn't that difficult, but it made me look different to people of other race and how they're going to treat another skin tone and how that isn't fair. So really, it wasn't that difficult, but it made me look different towards different race.
So both of you saw the video, a lot of emotion that you just shared about how it made you feel. Have you ever got a chance to talk with someone in law enforcement about how that made you feel, or just what happened?
No, but I would like to.
No.
So we're gonna do just that. After the break, we're gonna bring someone from law enforcement on to continue this discussion about the social justice movement and trying to build back that trust in the community. You're watching Justice for All Beyond the Cut. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Justice for All Beyond the Cut. Today we are having a conversation with the next generation. We are in the beautiful Prime Barbershop in Wesley Chapel. Our barbers are working hard in the back, actually cutting my son's hair right now. So a little bit more off the top, please, but we're good. We're good. Going into the break, we had pretty heavy discussion about law enforcement, what happened with George Floyd. So to help take that conversation to the next level, we've brought some folks on that you guys have requested to be able to address some of your concerns. So we have Nick Marolder.
Yes, sir.
29 years law enforcement experience,
Yes.
Police officer, detective, federal DEA.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being on and having this discussion. Dr. Micah Johnson, USF professor, activist, author, and you've actually written books. I have one of them in my hand, Police Youth Dialogue, and helping kids be able to kind of build that trust back with law enforcement. So I want to start with you, Nick, because you had a chance to hear the kids and their views of what happened with George Floyd, their inability to ever talk to a police officer about those emotions. Talk to me just your reaction from everything that you've heard so far, and what your message is to them.
what breaks my heart when I see, and I especially with children, and I see the videos, especially when police officers are driving down the neighborhoods and cops are, and the kids are hiding from the police. That bothers me the most, because I can tell you, being in law enforcement for 29 years and being around cops for over 30, every morning, every night, every shift that we come up into work, the last thing on our mind is that we're going to go out there and try to hurt somebody or try to kill somebody tonight. It's the complete opposite. We want to go out there and we all say, hey, we want to be that hero that day. We want to be able to go out there and help somebody. So when we see videos like we saw in the George Floyd incident, it's the blip on the screen, right? It's we have 100,000, 500,000 positive contacts on a yearly basis. And then you have that one incident or two incidents that come out and we get painted with a wide brush, and it hurts law enforcement and it hurts police officers especially. The message that I try to get out is that is not us. That is not the 99.9% of the police officers that are working the streets and working in the communities every day and night. It's just not. Are there bad police officers out there? Absolutely. Just like there's bad barbers, no offense, there's bad teachers, there's bad in the world. We don't come from some special factory. Police officers are just like you and me. We're human beings with life experiences, but I can tell you, being around them and being one myself, we're in it to do good and not for the bad. And it's our job and my job to try to branch and get the message out to try to see what we can do to fix that problem and try to make sure that it doesn't happen where kids are running away from the police now and hiding and afraid to talk to us.
So Gabrielle, this is your opportunity. You've never got a chance to talk to law enforcement, whether it's George Floyd or any other case that you saw out there. You have someone here. What questions do you have for him and your reaction to everything he just said?
How would you explain the term defund the police to maybe just somebody who doesn't know, or maybe a kid who is just hearing it for the first time?
The defund the police movement, it really bothered me when it first came out. I think as when it first started, and maybe a year ago, and it's progressed now, I think we see it's just not working. Do we have challenges? Absolutely. Mental health is a huge challenge. I can tell you, when I used to go on a call, I didn't ask for, hey, tell me about your mental health problems. Do you have any? We're just rolling up on a call and we're coming into contact with people. We have no idea what kind of mental health problems they have. We are seeing now that that's a major problem and we have to deal with that. Does monies need to be put into police work? Yes. Taking money away from the police, I think, is a problem. It needs to go into recruiting, obviously. I think the main problem and the main goal is we are having problems hiring police officers right now. Bottom line, nobody wants to be a cop, right? When I grew up, that was one of the top things. Nobody wants to put on a uniform now. My goal, I'd like to reach out. We need individuals like you to be cops. If I'm going to be policing a community that is 98% African American, wouldn't it help for me to have my partner as an African American male or female who came from the neighborhood? Boy, that would be great. Give me a little perspective. I'm coming from the outside. I'm a New Yorker. I came down here. I'm trying to police in Florida. That was difficult. So I believe that that's where we're going to turn this thing around. We've got to get young folks like you all involved in being cops and be the cool thing to do and say, I'm going to come in from my area, my neighborhood. I'm going to be a police officer and I'm going to be the one in here and I'm going to make a change. That's where I think where we can put the funding in. Instead of taking the money out, we should put it towards recruiting. And if they want to do it towards leaning towards mental health and helping us with that aspect, that's a great avenue. But that's where I think we should focus on.
So the defund the police debate, a lot of times that activists, people that have spoken out about that, has been about shifting some of those funds to preventative measures. Do you think that that's necessary? Because I know you're kind of leaning towards saying that we should be trying to recruit more officers, but some would say, hey, like the mental health that you mentioned, we need to have more mental health counselors to make sure that kids that may have seen something like the George Floyd video and might be a little traumatized, to be able to have access to those resources so that they don't in turn use that anger or unmanaged emotion to do something. Would you disagree in shifting some of those resources?
It's all about the money. And in each budget is going to be different, right? And each agency is going to be different. So if I have a smaller agency and you say you're going to defund the police and you're going to shift money towards this or that, and then it takes away from police officers being able to get body cameras or tasers or equipment that's going to help them on the street, whatever that might be, then I have a problem with that. If there's an abundance of money and they say, Nick, look, we're not going to delve into your budget here, but we found monies here that we're going to develop that help you work with your police budget, that's great. If you're going to defund the police and say, I can't give you the 10 officers you needed on the street, I'm only going to give you 4, that's a problem. So I can argue counterpoint and point with each one, depending on where the money's going. Do I believe that police officers should have somebody with them who can help them with mental health? Absolutely. Do I believe that you should send a mental health counselor with no taser and no gun into a situation to try to help somebody who's got mental problems? No, that's going to end badly, right? I think we've seen that. So I think we need to find a happy landing ground for both.
So, Dr. Mike, I want to get you in this conversation because, Gabrielle and Jordan, amazing kids, doing an amazing job so far, but they're just two of an entire nation of kids everywhere. And for some kids, that anger and distrust is a little bit deeper. Some of them may have experienced a personal loss. Some of them may have taken that video and it turned into real anger and frustration. How are they supposed to manage that? How are they supposed to build back that trust? We're going to talk about that after the break. You're watching Justice for All Beyond the Cut. Welcome back to Justice for All Beyond the Cut. We are talking to the next generation. Going into the break, we are focusing our conversation right now on building trust with law enforcement. Dr. Mike, I wanted to come to you because, as I mentioned, there are a lot of kids right now who anger is real, their distrust is real, and they don't really know how to manage that. You've actually taken the time to write books about having dialogue with police. Talk to me a little bit about that, on your advice for those kids.
For me, growing up, I didn't have access to diverse spaces or diverse people. I had to kind of make these makeshift mentors. And there are folks who had no idea what it was like to be young and black. But they put themselves in my shoes and they used their own experiences to connect with me. And that was invaluable to me. Unfortunately, most people won't do that. So you have to have some patience. So one way is reaching out and having dialogue. Another way is sort of drawing internally on what works for you. Transform your pain and your experiences, your discomfort, your emotions into something extremely positive. If you're an athlete, try to incorporate that into what you do and the way you take care of yourself. If you are a writer, make it a part of what you write and the way you write. Integrate your experiences and empowering yourself and your family into your lives in a positive way. All of those are ways to do that. And finally, I would say what works across the board, because as a professor, I'm referred to as a subject matter expert in race, social inequalities, and these issues. What works across the board is getting involved, be a part of it. So one thing you could do, you really can say, okay, I want to organize a conversation with police officers at our school, or I want to organize a conversation with police officers in our community, or I just want to get more involved. Maybe I just want to be that person that can talk to my classmates and peers about their experiences. So these are all ways that folks could cope with stressors in a more healthy way around race.
Gabrielle, I want to come back to you. Off camera, we talked a little bit, and you mentioned that you wish there was more black police officers. Does it make a difference for you if you're interacting with law enforcement or coming across in law enforcement if that officer is white or black? Do you feel differently?
It's just maybe not even just my comfort level, but it's just inspirational to see yourself, to see somebody who looks like you. It's like seeing your favorite person on a TV show, or seeing just somebody who maybe acts like you, looks like you, does the same thing you do. It's like when I'm watching a show and maybe I'm just seeing something that a character likes, the same thing I like. It makes me excited. And so seeing that in law enforcement and in the people that we're supposed to trust and the people that are supposed to keep us safe, it'll make people feel so much better, especially kids. They're curious. They're not born biased. I think they naturally want to know, they want to be informed. And so if we can just build that trust within kids, I think they will take it from there. They will make the world a better place. The next generation is ultimately, it's always going to be better. The next generation is always better than the last because they can learn from the past generation's mistakes, and they're coming in with fresh eyes. They don't have these eyes of 50 years of experiencing this. They're just only learning about it. And so if we can get them into all depths, all sides of it, I think that's what we really need, and it'll help so much.
Jordan, what about you? Do you feel different interacting with police officers, or if you see police officers that are black or white?
I feel like it'll inspire more kids to actually become police officers if they see different races, so they won't feel left out if they're that only race. They think they're that only race being a police officer, and they'd be treated differently. So I really feel like it'll inspire more kids to recruit and to try to become police officers to make the world a better place.
As a kid, it's like you never want to feel like you're the only one. You know, you don't want to be excluded when someone's getting a popsicle and you're not, or this person got treasure box and you didn't. So just having them feel that they're equal to that person next to them, it makes all the difference.
Dr. Mike, do you think that's one of the keys, is having more diversity in law enforcement?
That's one of the keys, diversity, not just in what folks look like, but where they come from. I think having folks who have deep ties to the communities that they serve is gonna fix a lot of issues. The problem is you have folks that serve certain communities that they don't have a lot of respect for, to be honest with you, or they don't have a lot of personal ties to those communities. I think if folks saw themselves and they really respected that community, and I feel like they would do, the strategy would be different. But diversity is not going to fix it because it's a system issue. So folks could be any color and learn this certain system, learn these procedures and behaviors. When I was his age, some of the worst encounters with police officers were folks who were not white. There were folks who were perpetuating issues and things that they learned trying to become a law enforcement officer. So that won't fix the issue. I think it's more so about how do we sort of have a paradigm shift. And that's where defund the police, to kind of go back to that, is that it's not about that slogan that's supposed to just spark some sort of interest. It's really about how do we begin to have a paradigm shift about what is policing, what could law enforcement look like, how do we reshape it? And that's what you're getting at when you're talking about learning from the past and developing, how do we refine what we know? And I think we're trying to use models of old in a world that's very diverse, very different. And we just have better tools so we could have a better idea and perspective of what law enforcement looks like. I think there definitely needs to be a paradigm shift. And that won't occur just by diversifying these spaces. It would have to be with some real reform and some deep changes to the way we perceive law enforcement and the way we conduct business in these communities.
You said learning from the past. You guys are in school. Just had first couple weeks. Learning a lot, I'm sure. How much are you learning about race? How much are you learning about social justice? We're going to dive into that because we're going to bring a couple teachers on after the break. You're watching Justice for All Beyond the Cut. Welcome back to Justice for All Beyond the Cut. We are continuing our conversation with the next generation. We want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the role of schools when it comes to social justice movements. So I know you guys take tests and answer questions all the time. Pop quiz. Do you feel schools, teachers do enough when it comes to addressing some of the issues we're talking about today?
I don't know if it's necessarily talked about. I think we learn the history behind slavery, the history behind race, and how they were treated over the last hundreds of years, but I don't know if They don't necessarily talk about the race, the diversity of the people who are in the schools, the people who are learning about it. I don't think they talk about that part of it as much, if it makes sense.
Jordan, what about you?
They really don't talk about what goes on now, but they talk about what went on in the past and what will come.
Okay. So to help us dive into this conversation, we have Stephanie Meyer, middle school history teacher, school board candidate. Yes. And we have Jalen Robinson, former middle school teacher, former high school teacher, and you also have a nonprofit aimed at mentoring young men. Thank you for joining our conversation. Stephanie, you just heard what they said.
Yes.
They feel schools are not doing enough
Right.
in talking about these issues. Your reaction to that?
So as a history teacher myself, obviously it makes me very happy to hear that you guys are learning real history, the good, the bad, all of it. That's very important. But I will say that I think teachers have an obligation to play a role in today's conversations about race as well. And I think that teachers and educators now need to make their classrooms a safe space so that you're comfortable sharing. But I think it's important that teachers really play a neutral role and making sure that everybody has an opportunity to say how they feel. And teachers really need to really play kind of the, I guess referee, I guess maybe isn't the right word, but just really come from a neutral standpoint so that everybody feels like they're heard, they're valued, and their experiences are taken into account.
With your teaching now, has that come up? Like, have you had scenarios where kids start talking about some of these issues, like George Floyd or other
Yes.
scenarios?
Yes, yes, we have, and again, and I think it's really important because we heard and we talked about in the last segment, there's two sides, right? Everybody has their own experiences that they bring to the table and their own perspective, which shapes our worldview. And so I think it's really important that teachers make that space available, but also come without their own bias in their classroom. We really have to hold our own political feelings, our own biases and opinions back as teachers. And I think that it's really difficult to do sometimes, especially if we are so impassioned about certain subjects. Like race is definitely one that I think is we're all very passionate about right now. And as we should be, but again, we have to make that space available to our students so that everybody feels comfortable to share and talk. And we need to make sure that all of our children feel valued at school and feel equal at school.
Jalen, you spent years teaching and you're still working with youth right now, especially young men. Your reaction to what they're saying and just kind of addressing issues like this with kids?
It's very important, and teachers do have an obligation, and I taught language arts, so from the literature we read to the topics that we discussed, I made it a point to make sure that we were having those real life discussions, the stuff that's happening right now, the stuff that happened in the past that nobody wants to talk about. But what's really important and what you find, it really depends on the school that you're at, the teacher that you have, the administrators that you have, because the textbooks, the curriculum, the standards aren't going to give you the real. They're not going to give you the situations, the real things that we need to be talking about. So it really depends on, what your teacher looks like, what that school looks like, to be able to have those conversations, to talk to those kids. And the teacher's got to want to do it because it sounds good. And, thankful to your students that you will have those conversations, but so many of our schools don't look like that.
Yeah, I agree. When we first started, I was saying we need more teachers like you guys that do talk about that because everybody deserves it, but not everybody gets it. Not every teacher is going to say the same thing, and they're not. Some teachers might shy away from it because it is a tough conversation. We should be unbiased. They should be facilitating what we need to learn without it being full of a one-sided opinion or bias. It just needs to be so that people can understand and they can know. And we need to know not only the history of it, but the emotion behind the history, because it shouldn't be just bland. We need to know that it's wrong. This is what happened. It was unfair and they were treated wrong. And so I think that's what really needs to be shown in schools, is that side of it.
Do you feel like you're getting those lessons now in your classrooms or schools that you've been in?
Sometimes, sometimes. It depends on like he said, it does depend on the school you go to. It depends on your teacher, what they're willing to talk about, how they talk about it, and there's certain things they bring up, because some teachers, they don't bring up what's happening now. As a history teacher, it's their job to teach history. They might not even touch on what's happening today, what's happening now, what's happened in this last year. And that's what we need to talk about more, because history isn't just 100 years ago. It's today, because we are history.
Stephanie, your reaction?
So I think it's really important, and this is something that I always do. At least a couple of times a week, I try to leave some room for what I call sidebar conversations. So yes, we have content to teach, right? We have standards, we have benchmarks that we need to meet each week so that we can move forward with whatever subject it is that we're teaching. Academics is obviously our primary goal every day, right, in our classrooms. But of course, we have to make room and space to talk about what is happening and allow for our students to share, because it's not just race that kids want to talk about. It's a lot of other things. The difference now than it was when I was in school, which was 20 years ago, is that you guys have computers right in front of you every day, all day. When I was a kid, I didn't know what was going on in the world unless I sat down with my parents and watched the nightly news, right? Now, you guys have school-sponsored iPads, you have, maybe you have a phone. So anytime you flip that phone open, the news, what's happening, today is right there in front of you. So you guys have unfettered access to what really is adult problems and adult material. So we can't sit here and say anymore that you guys are too young, because we as adults have given you access to this information. And so I think it's important that we allow you guys to share how you feel about what's happening today in our world. It's vitally important that our teens, especially your age group, that is such an influential age, such an age where you guys are so impressionable about what is happening today, right? It's shaping who you are. We need to make sure that we understand and that teachers are here. You guys need to know that you can trust your teachers, that you can trust your administrators, you can trust police officers, that these adults care about you guys, and they want to make sure that your voices and your feelings are heard.
Jordan, do you feel comfortable when you go to school, if you're feeling a certain way about one of the stories that she mentioned, like you could just go on your phone, go on your laptop, see different stories, go into your teacher and having a conversation about how you're feeling?
It depends on who the teacher is and how they want to talk about it. If they're not open to talk about it, then I won't force them or walk up on them and actually start talking about it. But if they are open to talk about it, I feel like you would want to do it in front of your students, so they would, if they want to ask the question but they're too afraid, they can actually get the answer to their questions.
Do you agree with that? Having a group discussion instead of...
I do, but I think, where we have to, as teachers, I think our role from day one is to build that trust with our students. Day one, right out of the gate, we have to work really hard to build that trust and that relationship with our students, because this is all about relationships, right? I have wonderful relationships with my students, and it's because I extended my hand first.
Jalen, you mentioned something that really kind of stuck with me. You said it depends on the school. You all guys also mentioned that it depends on the teacher, but depending on the school. And that kind of bothered me, and it really stuck with me. I want to dive into that a little bit more. We'll talk about that after the break. You're watching Justice for All Beyond the Cut. Welcome back to Justice for All Beyond the Cut. We're going to continue our conversation right now of the role of schools when it comes to social justice movements. Jalen, you mentioned something a while back that has stuck with me, that it depends on the school. To me, that's wrong. like it should be unified across the board. So elaborate a little bit. Are you saying certain areas, certain demographics when you make that comment?
I'm saying it depends on, I mean, because you can even have a school in a black neighborhood that the leadership is black, but that's not their focus. So it really just depends on the focus of those administrators, and you can only hope that if the administrators look like what the community and what the students look like, that's their focus. And from my experience, the schools that I've worked in, that's usually how it goes. Those schools that are ran by people that look like those kids, look like those communities, those administrators are making sure that those teachers are paying special attention to how they treat those kids because they know what those kids are going through. I've been in some situations where that's not always the case. So it really just depends. And you can have, you know, a situation where the school is in the hood and the administrators might not be black or Spanish. They might be white, but they're still focused on the needs of those students. So I wouldn't say it's really like a black or white thing. It's really comes down to a who is it kind of thing.
How do you feel about that?
I have to agree with you because I grew up on that flip side where the schools I went to, I'm used to being the only person of color. And so I'm used to not even just the students being the only black student, but there's no one else. There's no teachers. I don't see anybody in those halls that look like me. And what you're saying is 100% right. I mean, we are at, like, you guys are there when it happens, which means you guys can help. You guys are our teachers. And so when we're going home to our parents and we're telling them that happens, what's happening to us, they can only do so much. They're only there for the aftermath. No matter how much they call the schools and try to help and talk to the teachers, they can't hold our hand while we walk into that classroom. They're not with us in class. We need people who are there, who can help us when it's happening, before it happens, and help us deal with it after so it doesn't happen again.
Jordan, final thoughts on this topic?
Out of my whole middle school from 6th to 8th, I've had 2 black grown-ups that's worked in my school that I've actually met, which is my middle school football coach and then my language arts 6th grade teacher. And she no longer works at our school, so there's just my football coach. And he's the really only one I can talk to because I'm really like close to him. And I feel like most teachers I really can't talk to because they won't know how it really feels to be a different color from the rest.
And Jalen, you work with young men, so to hear Jordan make that kind of comment, what's your final words to him?
I wish, you know, there were more, you know, of us in the classroom, you know, because my boys tell me the same thing, and I know being a boy that, you know, it hits different when you see somebody that looks like you in the classroom, leading the school, leading the classroom, but you know, until we get there, whoever you can find, whoever you can talk to them. And it might not be at your school, it might be in the community, it might be in your neighborhood, it might be in your household. You know, find somebody that you can, because you know, you're gonna be in situations even when you get older where it's gonna be times when you're the only one that looks like you. And you just gotta know that they might not be where you are now, but they out there. So when you get outside of school, find somebody that you can talk to. You know, your coach, make sure you know, keep him on your top 5 friends list so he can, you know, look out for you. But, you know, and that's why it's so important, like you said, that we get more men in the classroom and men in the schools because, you know, it's important for them to see that. But, you know, like you talked about teacher pay and all the other stuff that goes along with the profession, that it's difficult to find us there. So, you know, that's a call for all the brothers out there. Get into the classroom, and that might be a call for you. You know, because you know the impact that it had on you, that might be something that you do, you know, in your future, go into the classroom. Be that for somebody else, for another young man coming up behind you.
These kids spend so much time at school with you guys, you know, interacting, learning. You know who else they spend a lot of time with? Their moms at home. And they've been sitting on the sideline listening to this entire conversation. I'm very curious to see how they feel about everything they've heard. We'll hear from them after the break. You're watching Justice for All Beyond the Cut. Welcome back to Justice for All Beyond the Cut. We are wrapping up our discussion with the next generation. I have with us two very special guests. We have Tricia Young, mom of Gabrielle, Brittany Edwards, mom of Jordan. They were fine the whole segment. All of a sudden, they look real nervous. Moms, everything that you've heard so far today, I just want your reaction to the conversation. I'll start with you.
I think the conversation is needed, and it was a good conversation. You had some good discussions, and I was interested in everything that everyone had to say. The police officer that was on, he had some good answers, and he cleared things up. I think the kids are doing a great job answering your questions.
Are you proud of her?
I am very proud of her.
Miss Brittany, how about you?
It's interesting to hear their points and what they go through as kids in school and what they have to deal with on a daily basis that they might not come back and tell us because we're their parents. So having this discussion with them, and now they're more informed to where they can go to the school and have more discussions. It's pretty cool.
Was there anything that either of you heard today that you did not know before?
I was happy to hear the police officer's take on defund the police. That's the topic that I was interested in. So I think that he explained that he agrees that some funding should go towards mental health, and I think that that's a step in the right direction. And I heard him talk about being in a community that he didn't know anything about, and I wish there was more people like him that can admit that they have that downfall and is willing to invest in the community and learn about the community that they work in.
Hearing this conversation, now going home, Jordan, any other kids that you have, like, what changes for you now? Like, after this experience, what do you change now at home?
More open discussion with them and how they feel about everything. I got 4 boys from 15 to 7. They all go through it. And I want it to be easier for them as they get older and not get harder. So for them to know that they can open up and speak to anyone, no matter, even if they have a negative opinion on how they feel, they should still be able to speak their mind.
Kids, I'm coming back to you. Jordan, I want your final thoughts, your message to our viewers watching at home that might still feel, still a little too young. I don't really know. Just your final message overall from everything today.
I feel like if you really have questions, that you should be able to speak up to those that you look up to. And not every kid has the experience that we had today. So we put our voice together and we spoke for those kids who didn't have the experience.
Ms. Gabrielle, final words.
This was a step in the right direction. I think this is going towards the future. The people I talk to, it's something I've never experienced before, and it's something I'm always going to remember. And all of them need to be heard, and this is what we need to have more of. Hearing from our teachers, hearing from officers. We should hear it more than just within the walls of our houses, because in the real world, there's so many different point of views, there's so many different people, there's diversity, and we need to hear everybody. That's how we become better.
I want to thank all our guests. I want to thank you, Gabrielle. I want to thank Jordan for being so brave and having this open dialogue. This is what it's going to take. Us having honest conversations, sometimes uncomfortable conversations, with people of different races, different backgrounds. But it's one goal in mind, shaping our next generation. Thank you so much for watching Justice for All Beyond the Cut. Until next time, stay safe.